going on, you guys? Rasati out here in Singapore, and look at that. You know what? It looks like it's about to rain, and I don't want it to rain. Ugh, whatever. Okay, anyway, so back to the topic at hand. I've had a lot of conversation with my clients lately, and my biggest stumbling block, my highest mountain to climb as I help these people try and sort out their emotions and whatever situations they've got going on, trying to maneuver life and crises and whatnot. The hardest thing I have to do is to help them be really honest with themselves. I can ask all the questions in the world. I can point them to what they need to be looking at. I can tell them all the answers. But if they're not honest with themselves about what's really going on, if they're not honest with themselves about how they play into their own life, if they're standing in their own way, if they're adding to the drama that's there, if they're being active participants in whatever chaos is ensuing in their lives, if they're not honest about that, it is the most difficult thing in the world to help them make effective changes. I've created journals, I've created podcasts, I've created IGTV videos, I've done interviews, I have done one-on-ones, I've done group classes, live classes, webinars, coursework. I've done it all. And the hardest thing in the world is to get people to understand that they are contributing somehow, that there is something inside of them that is allowing what's happening that they don't like to continue happening. Let me give you an example. Baby girl is struggling a little bit with math because she has a slight case of dyslexia. And to be honest, so did I growing up. But I realized, well, maybe I didn't realize it. I think I started doing something and it kind of worked and I stuck with it. There is an order of operations for me in order for me to get things done as effectively as possible without making any mistakes. And that happens throughout my life, right? So whether it was in school or in work, let's say if you're working with a system of some sort. We were using Opera in the hotel industry in Grand Hyatt. We were using SAP in the freight forwarding part of Lumber Liquidators. So when I'm using a program, there's an order of operations in which I need to complete a task so I don't miss anything along the way. But how do you figure that out? You miss things along the way and you fuck it up, right? So when I'm teaching baby girl math and we're looking at 4 and 5 digit numbers that she's either adding or subtracting, in a minute she's going to start multiplying and dividing. I need her to pay attention. It has to be an order of operations. She hasn't gotten to those mixed equations yet where you have plus, minus, times, divide in the same sentence without, with the parentheses and all that. She hasn't gotten there yet, but she's doing multiple digits, right? Where it's addition, subtraction right now. And I'm trying really hard to get her to understand the concept of borrowing versus carrying over. And they have different words for it here in Singapore. She has a habit of using the ones column to add. And if she has to carry anything over, there's an extra 10 from the ones column and she has to put into the tens column. Suddenly she forgets what she's doing and she starts subtracting on the tens column. Can't do that, right? So I have to teach her. You have to start. This is the only case in the world where you have to start from right to left and you have to do one at a time and you need to double check and make sure you look at the sign on the equation itself before you continue doing what you're doing. Same thing when I was trying to teach her how to read the time. She would forget which one is a longhand and which one is a shorthand because sometimes artistically they kind of look the same. But for the most part, I try to tell her, hey, the longhand, you can see which one the longhand is. What does that represent? The longhand represents minutes. Why? Because there are more minutes in a day than there are hours. And the shorthand represents hours. Why? Because there are less hours in a day than there are minutes. If there are 60 minutes in 1 hour, obviously there's only 24 in a day. So that's how I'm trying to make sense of it all. She needs to look at the hours. She needs to look at the minutes. She needs to decide which one is which, right? So the first things first, when I teach her, look at the arms on the clock, which one is which. And then once you figure out which one is the minutes, you got to count by fives to figure out how many minutes it is. And then you need to look at where the hour hand is and which hour it is after. I try really hard not to give her before and after. I just give her after because I need her to understand that very, very clearly before she moves on to anything else. So we don't do quarter till or half past. We do just how many minutes exactly after the hour it is. That's how I taught her how to read time. So When you have an order of operations and a steady way of predicting the same outcome every time, then it becomes, all right, why are you making the mistake? What is it you're telling yourself for this to be justified in your brain? And then you find out later that it's a mistake. Now, she gets very frustrated if she gets things wrong. When I correct her on math, she gets very frustrated and she wants to quit. And she wants to throw a temper tantrum and she doesn't want me to be anywhere near her because suddenly she feels like I'm picking on her. And it's the same with my clients. I need them to understand I'm not picking on you. I'm pointing something out. I'm pointing something out. This is where you need to look at. This is where you keep tripping up. This is where you're having a tough time. And once you realize, yes, you are having a tough time, you need to be very honest. Even if you're not honest with me, you need to be honest in your own brain about what it is you're telling yourself to justify what you're doing. If you're afraid, you need to be brave enough and bold enough to say, hey, I'm scared. And then the next question becomes, well, what am I scared of? If you're avoiding doing something, or if you're doing something 95% of the way, you need to be able to admit what that 5% you're missing is. What part are you avoiding? What part are you skipping? What part are you not saying? I know a lot of people out there who will tell you the truth, but it's not the whole truth. It's most of the truth, but it's not the whole truth. And at that point, you need to be able to admit to yourself, what part of the truth are you omitting and why? Because you will not heal. You will not get through these things unless you're completely 100% self-honest. Yes, you want to be amazing. Yes, you want to be, deserving. You want to feel like, you're on top of the world and you're invincible. Yes, of course, you want a loving partnership. Yes, of course, you want to be the best possible ever. But in order to be the best possible ever, you have to let go of some of the things that are continually making you sick. Some of the behaviors that keep you stuck. Some of the habits you have that stop you from moving forward. You need to be able to admit those things. You need to be able to come clean. And it's not easy. It's very, very difficult. It's part of the reason why I've adopted a third party angle to how I do my counseling. I don't talk about your problems. I ask you for an example of a character in a movie you've seen somewhere that is exactly where you are right now, anticipating or experiencing the same problems and same symptoms that you are at the moment. Let's talk about that. And then I want another recommendation. I want another movie with another character of a perfect relationship, an ideal situation. So you have one recommendation of where you are and another recommendation of where you want to be. And let's talk about those characters, because guess what? You don't have to admit nothing to me, but we can talk about those characters fully, completely. And we can discuss what they do and what they don't do, and what they're missing and why they're missing it. And obviously the character isn't there to defend themselves, so we can talk all around the situation if we want. But I guarantee you every time, because there's no pressure, you don't have to admit to anything to me, in the course of those comparisons, those character comparisons, you're going to have a couple aha moments. But in order to move forward in your own life, if you don't have a coach, if you don't have a guide, someone holding your hand through this or helping guide the way, light the way for you, you're going to have to be very, very honest with yourself about what's really going on and why. Because until you can be honest 100% of the time, you're going to find yourself in front of the same situation, the same lessons over and over again. It's just the way of the world. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments, concerns, please drop them in the comments below. If you have any questions about how do I go about being honest with myself? How do I know if I'm not being honest with myself? Why don't we sit down and have a chat? Okay? No pressure. Let's talk. But until then, y'all, take care. I love you guys. Bye.